Thanks for having me, guys. I'm not really used to talking to a group. I'm excited to do this. I'm Philip Anson. I'm the founder and chief operating officer of Evil Foods. That's EVOL. It's love backwards. We are a consumer packaged frozen premium brand that sells burritos, bowls, now flatbreads and pizzas to grocery stores, convenience stores, coffee shops, other food service channels nationally. We're in about 6,000 stores. I've been doing this for about 10 years, exactly 10 years actually. And we are one of the fastest growing natural and organic brands in the country, in the United States. So I want to talk a little bit about that in this point that I'm not going to talk too much about my business and the mechanics of business. I figured since you guys are all entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, and I have a very kind of quintessential entrepreneurial story, that I would talk about entrepreneurship and some of the philosophies that I've kind of gotten in touch with from being an entrepreneur. So I wanted to start by talking about this idea of success. Everybody thinks I'm successful now. That's why I'm speaking to you. That's why people want to listen to what I have to say, and people call me on the phone for speaking engagements or to come talk to me or whatever. But success is a really kind of tricky place to be. The line between success and failure and luck is so fine and bleak sometimes. It's amazing to really comprehend, and I'll get to that when you hear my story. I'll tell you a little bit. You'll understand a little bit more why I feel that way. I'm going to go back to 2002 when I was 23 years old. I was fresh out of college. At that point, I had just graduated from the University of Denver. I was initially from Los Angeles. I was a creative person. I was a artistic person. I wasn't a business person. I wasn't a math and science person. I grew up playing music. I grew up very interested in culinary arts. I worked in restaurants from the time that I was in high school through college. I got a degree in communications from the University of Denver. I was actively pursuing a career in journalism or photojournalism while I was working at a restaurant in Denver and living in El Dorado Springs doing a lot of rock climbing. So that's kind of where I was. I was really kind of a very lost child, really, young adult. Kind of an adult, not really even, at 23. I didn't know what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. I was on a trip in Joshua Tree rock climbing, and I said, you know what, I'm burnt out on my restaurant job. I'm going to go back to Colorado. I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to sell burritos to climbers coming into El Dorado Canyon. And if I can make 500 burritos a week, I bet I can make $500 a week, and that'll kind of subsidize my life. So I was really thinking that I was going to have not a growth business, what I would call a lifestyle business. I was going to have a business that made me $500 a week. I was going to go out to the desert on the weekend and go climb towers and canyonlands, and that was going to be my life. And it didn't work out that way at all. I think what really was brewing was that I didn't want to be on a line in a restaurant, and I really wanted to do something really big and really substantial. I wanted to do something that I could sink my teeth into. I didn't know what it was. It was very incidental that I decided to go into the burrito business. I had no market research. I had no background. I didn't know what a balance sheet was. I didn't know what a profit and loss statement was. I didn't know anything. I went out and I got my first account at the El Dorado Corner Market on Highway 170 and Highway 93, and the company was born in February 2002. That's a picture of my original cabin, my 1906 cabin in El Dorado. That's the El Dorado Corner Market. That's my original labels on my climbing helmet there. I went out and I got 5 or 10 clients in the first couple of weeks. People were kind of interested. I just walked in off the street. I was selling them out of my car. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. One thing that's interesting that I always kind of think about is at these types of talks or panels, people always ask, what would you do if you were to run into your 22-year-old self today, knowing what you know now? And what I always say is I would say stop, don't do anything else. Just whatever you're planning on doing next, stop, don't do it, or do the opposite because it's wrong. So that's really, I really, to be frank, I don't think that I made a good decision in my business for the first 5 years of the business. And the reason for that is, there's a lot of reasons for that. But the main reason for that is I had no idea what I wanted to be. And if you have no idea what you want to be, and not that I didn't know what I wanted to be as a business, I didn't know that. I mean, higher level than that, I didn't know what I wanted to be as a person. I didn't know what I was trying to accomplish or contribute in my life. So that was a big problem. Beyond that, I really had no intentionality of any kind in my business at that point. I was truly shooting from the hip, and I was completely isolated. I had no partners, I had no mentors, I had no people like you who were organized in some fashion talking to each other about entrepreneurship. I didn't really acknowledge that I was an entrepreneur. I just felt like I was trying to start a burrito business. I guess I got lucky that I was persistent enough to go through this cycle and to keep selling my product. People liked the product. I guess it also helped that I had a good quality product. And I went out and I got into grocery stores. I moved from going to the mom and pop shops to going into grocery stores. I got into Whole Foods. That's me in the shelves of Whole Foods. When I first got into Whole Foods, I still only had one employee who would help me make some of the burritos. I would wake up in the morning, I would take my orders, I would go into my, it wasn't a plant, it was a kitchen that I rented by the hour. At about 12, I would stay there often through the night, sometimes till 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes pulling all-nighters. Sometimes I would, sleep, take a nap for an hour on a pallet of pinto beans and then get up and keep making burritos. I can't do that anymore. I can't work that hard anymore. But I had years of that. And I got myself into a situation where I had maxed out my credit cards. I was truly bootstrapping it. I had no business plan. I had no capitalization plan. I had no strategic plan. I was like, make more burritos, try and figure out how to make them cheaper and sell more of them. I mean, that was pretty much it. It was the worst plan ever. The problem really, besides me having no intentionality in my life, was that I was isolated and that I had no plan. By 2005, I had moved into a plant. I had gotten USDA inspection on my plant so I could make meat burritos. That was kind of a big deal. And I was starting to realize that I was onto something awesome, but that I really needed to kind of adopt a real plan if I was going to have success. My business wasn't scalable. I was delivering everything fresh. It was kind of a made fresh daily concept, just like sandwiches. I had a refrigerated van. I was driving them up and down the Front Range 3.5 days a week, and I was making them 3.5 days a week, and that was my plan. And I started to realize, wow, having a manufacturing plant, it's like pretty heavy. I think I've tapped out all my credit cards. I've got no money left, and I'm not filling up the capacity here. So I better, if I'm going to be in the manufacturing world, I better figure out how to fill up my capacity and have scale in my business. So I started looking at frozen. I'd never thought about frozen. And what I discovered was that there was a huge gap in the market for a premium, natural and organic frozen burrito that tasted great. I got really lucky. Serendipitously, Chipotle had been growing while I was growing my burrito business. They really built my market for me. It was perfect. I never thought too much about it. But looking back now, I used to go to the original Chipotle shop, which is just right by DU, all throughout college. We lived off of it. They built that market, and they realized they found that people want something else besides Taco Bell. I call it Toxic Hell, actually. They want people want convenience. They want a convenient. There's something about a burrito. I don't know what it is, but it's the convenience. It's the portability. People love it. Everybody loves it. There isn't one person really that doesn't like a burrito. They tapped into that, and they went into the premium sector with that, with natural and organic. So they really built that market. So just about the time that I was looking at frozen, I was realizing that they had kind of built my market for me. And what I realized was that there was nothing great in the frozen food section. It was all what I call, kind of cheap belly fill, 3 for $1 burritos. So I said, you know what, I think that, I should probably shut down this fresh business. It's not doing well. I haven't made $1 and go into frozen. So that was kind of the big first aha that I had. That was the first big light bulb. The second one was really coming out of isolation. Getting people around me, mentors, a lot of the people that are actually in the natural foods industry in Boulder around me, who I all know super well now. And what they all told me was that I was completely unfocused. I was doing all these other products aside from burritos. I was doing co-packing for other people that had products to try and fill up the capacity. And I was just completely scattered. I had this can-do mentality where I was so optimistic and so passionate and I could go make anything. But I was, pretty much out of money. I was completely scattered. And I really needed to change my plan. So those two things, realizing that I could go into frozen and getting some people around me that could actually give me some intelligent advice, were two huge things. The third huge thing was looking back at myself and saying, why do you want to be in business? Because it obviously wasn't to subsidize my rock climbing career. Because if it was, I would have done that, and I didn't do that. I went out and I bought a refrigerated van, and I got into manufacturing, and I got into debt. If you want a lifestyle business, you don't go do those things, unless you're stupid. Or unless you're running your business without any intentionality. So I started looking at that, and what I realized was that I did want to be a business person. I did want to be an entrepreneur. I had an appetite for the risk, obviously. I had an appetite for the persistence that it was going to take to do this and working the long hours. Now I needed to, craft a plan. And what I did at that point was I crafted a plan to shut down all the fresh business, to abandon all the co-pack business, and to write a real business plan based on, real data and around the frozen food space. And I did that, and I was able to attract some capital. I got some small seed money, some friends and family money, and I was able to get enough money to go prove that concept. I went to some trade shows, and within a few years, we had an amazing data story. I was onto something. Our burritos were moving better than some of our competitors who had been in the marketplace for 20 years and had management teams and had marketing budgets and had all the things that I didn't even know what they were. So I knew I was onto something. I built another business plan, and I was actually able to attract some really substantial capital from two people that are now my partners in the business, Tom Spear and Brendan Sinnott. They previously ran and sold an all-natural granola company called Bare Naked. They sold it to Kellogg's in August of 2007, and they were kind of looking for their next big thing. They interviewed over 150 companies, and I was I guess it was a perfect marriage. The moment we met, the chemistry was right. At this point, I had some sophistication. I had learned about marketing. I'd learned how to write a business plan. I'd gone and surrounded myself by all these mentors and all these people that were super smart. And I was able to kind of articulate my intention in my business. And I was able to attract them. That was 2.5 years ago. Since then, our business has absolutely exploded. At that time, I kind of knew exactly what I needed to realize my vision. It took so much more money than I ever thought. Imagine that, competing as a consumer packaged good in one of the most competitive industries on the planet. Going up against, Nestle and Kellogg's and brands like that, which are the brands that we are going up against now. And our brand is exploding now. We've built a management team. We've kind of architected all the things that I wanted to, with both on the manufacturing side, on the HR side, on the finance side. So we have all these tools now, and now it's really kind of easy. It's all blocking and tackling. It's all, write the plan, perform the plan, report against the plan, reintegrate all the learnings to the front end of the process, and kind of adapt from there. So we're at this point of success, back to my initial point, success. But the line between success and failure was so fine. If I didn't find Brendan and Tom to come into my business and infuse money into my business, I would have gone bankrupt. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Would have happened, and it probably would have happened within 3 months. At the moment that we closed the deal, I was probably 150 to 200 days out with all my vendors. Probably owed over $100,000 to my vendors. I just kept calling. I kept those relationships so strong. I told them I was going to take care of it. They believed me. Thankfully, everything worked out, and those relationships are really, really rock solid now. So it's actually a pretty amazing story. in regards to that. But it really could have gone the other direction. And I think that that's kind of an important trait of entrepreneurship, is that just because you have one success, just because I'm successful now and that, you know, we're in 6,000, 7,000 stores and, you know, we're the fastest growing brand and everybody wants to talk to me or everybody wants to hear from me, it really doesn't mean anything, because it can all evaporate tomorrow if you don't stay on top of it. So that's one of my biggest kind of learnings from this whole thing, is success is not a destination at all. It is a day-to-day discipline that you need to practice every day of your life as an entrepreneur if you want to continue to be successful. Otherwise, you will not be successful. So that's one huge thing. The other thing that I keep going back to is the idea of intentionality. You know, if you had asked me when I started my business why I started my business, it was to fund my rock climbing career. If you ask me now why, you know, I wake up and go to work every day, it's to educate people about eating and the environment. It's to work with a world-class team that reports to me that is probably one of the best teams in the industry. It's to be a part of all the amazing things that I get to be a part of. It's, you know, to do these types of things, to push myself personally, you know, to learn how to, you know, articulate thoughts to a group, and to hopefully, you know, teach you guys something about my experience. So don't ever do what I did. Don't not have a plan, and don't not understand why you're going into business. That's a really bad idea. And then don't go max out your credit cards to fund it, because that won't work either. Well, maybe it will if it's well architected, but I don't recommend it. Now that, you know, I have all of this success and intentionality, everything is going very, very well, because it's all kind of obvious, and all the mechanics of running a business when you have the right people involved in the business is really easy. It's not hard stuff. It's all kind of very scientific, backing out of, you know, what are our goals? Are our goals for people to eat the product? Well, how are they going to eat the product? Well, they got to try the product. All right, well, how are they going to try the product? It's got to be at a good price. All right, what will they tolerate? What's the price tolerance? What does it cost us to make it? And you back all the way out of it, and you get, you know, to all the kind of granular details that you need to run your business. So, you know, I'd like to kind of highlight, you know, the three things that I think are most important. One, don't be in isolation in your business. If you guys are all already here, you're not in isolation, that's a good thing. That was a huge failure of mine, and it was a reflection of my not knowing what I wanted to be when I was 22 years old and started this thing. Number two, have some intentionality. To have some intentionality really requires having some introspection in your life. I do not think that I think that people that don't have the ability to be introspective, I don't think that they should be entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship requires taking risks. It requires infringing your doctrines and your actions on other people, and people that do that without the ability to look at what they're doing can really hurt other people. And then the third thing is invite other people, hopefully the people that you respect most in your life, the people that are smartest, that you know, to be part of your business with you. It's kind of an extension of don't isolate yourself in your business. I got really lucky, and it was a really kind of lucky convergence of worlds that my partners, Brendan and Tom, that not only are they two of the most principled people in the world, we get along very well. I can trust them with my life, and it's just kind of a crazy convergence of lives in terms of we've been really living parallel lives. We're the same age. We graduated from high school the same year. We went into business the same year. They started Bare Naked the same year that I started my burrito company. So I got really lucky with them. They also had an appetite for risk and wanted to go invest in my business. So that's kind of the learnings that I would kind of, that's what I've learned. And I think that, you know, it applies to any business. A lot of you guys are talking about businesses that are not nearly as capital intensive as my businesses. We have a manufacturing plant. We have 40 employees. We just installed an inline spiral freezer that allows us to go to about 40,000 pounds of product a day. We manufactured about 200,000 pounds of product in the last 7 days, probably about 7 or 8 truckloads of product. And we're dealing with madness over there. I mean, forklifts and hard hat environment, earplugs, OSHA regulation, USDA, FDA, EPA, I mean everything. So we've got a really hairy business. So know what you're getting involved in. I had no idea I was going there when I decided to sell these burritos out of a cooler. So yeah, it's a little mind-boggling. So you know, understand what you're going into. At the same time, you know, people often ask me, how did you get through those first 5 years when you went, or you know, the first 7 years before you were able to raise the right amount of capital and you were so far out with payables and you were, you know, kind of hanging by a thread? And the answer, to be honest, at some points was denial. And people laugh, but denial is a really important tool. Not just in business, I think in life. I mean, and I don't advocate for use of denial in everything. But when you make a decision, you know, to go be in business, and you are really going to, you know, see it through and be persistent and not give up, there are moments where you absolutely need to live in the denial of the pain that you are suffering to get to the next day, because it really is brutal at times. I worked 100-hour weeks for probably a period of 4 months at one point. I worked myself so hard that I developed a foot problem at one point, being on my feet so much, you know, running around concrete floors, up and down ladders, up and down trucks, you know, running forklifts. So to go through that kind of pain, which it is required in some of these businesses, it was in mine, does require a fair bit of denial. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. You can see it's very entrepreneurial of me. I prepared nothing for this. I'm showing you the PDF document from my website. It's pathetic. And that's because I've been at my plant for 15 hours today. I got there at 4 o'clock this morning. So you guys can find out a lot more about us online at evilfoods.com. We make a lot of awesome premium, all natural and organic frozen convenience food. I'm happy to talk to any of you guys or take questions. I told you I'd repeat it and I didn't. The question, okay. Yeah, the question was, how did I convince my partners to invest in my business when my business was in such bad shape? And the answer is twofold. One, my partners being really, really smart entrepreneurs and really smart businessmen knew that the fact that my business looked like it was failing on paper didn't mean anything. They knew that, and they knew that consumer packaged brands often take decades to become profitable, and that profitability in the early stages of a consumer packaged product is essentially meaningless. And that, you know, from their perspective, the growth was much more important, and I was able to show that. The other reason that it didn't scare them is because I was completely truthful and authentic and transparent with them from the very beginning. And I wasn't ashamed to tell them, you know, the condition that the business was in.
All right, well, because it's really a part two of the same question, right? So did you find them or did they find you? And if you found them, how did you do that? If they found you?
Okay, the question was, how did I find my investors and my partners in my business? And the answer is through really elementary networking. It's really pretty funny, actually. My RA from my freshman year of college at the University of Denver, he and I are good friends, although we don't see each other much. We probably communicate a couple times a year, see each other maybe once or twice a year. He knew that I was looking for capital, and he was like, you know, I just met this great guy, and you guys are going to really hit it off. And he made an email introduction. And at this point, I was so demoralized because I had literally presented my business plan, pitched my business plan to hundreds of people and to angel investor groups and forums and everybody. And I had attracted some capital, but not nearly what I needed, what I knew that I needed to achieve to execute my business plan. And then 4 days later, I had a meeting with him, and I was pessimistic about it. I was like, great, I'm going to spend, you know, another, you know, day talking to a guy who, you know, who isn't going to do anything for me. And the minute that I met him, the chemistry was amazing. And I was like, wow, you know, that felt kind of different. And it really just kind of escalated from there. And it took 6 months to get that deal done. I mean, it was a big deal. It was a preferred stock deal. Our closing binder from our lawyers about that thick. comes on a DVD. It was a really hairy deal. And, I mean, and that's quick, I think, 6 months. So I got lucky with networking, I think, is the answer. So don't ever underestimate the power of networking.
I was going to ask, do you think that you could have, when you kind of realized at some point that you were just keeping on going in this game, even though maybe you hadn't planned, you thought it was going to be a lifestyle business at first? I guess I'm asking about that intentionality. How could you have gone into any other business at that point once you realized that it was kind of more the game that you were excited about, or what got you to the point when you kind of really started loving where you were and getting excited about being in a growth business and going to work every day where you have to deal with, forklifts?
I think looking back, I never really got excited. I never really started enjoying my business until about a year and a half ago. I think that there were moments, I had a few glimpses of, I mean, there were moments of excitement and fun, but I think I was running on pure adrenaline and denial for a lot of the time. And at the time that I realized how in deep I was financially with this business, it was kind of too late, and it was either abandon ship or make it work. And there were so many times that, my wife and I had the conversation. It was like, when do we give up? When do I give up? And we didn't. I didn't give up. Maybe I should have. I mean, obviously where I am now in my life, I've got the greatest life in the world. And I've got so much fulfillment in my life that it's hard to imagine having given up. But if you ask me, if I had to do it again, would I? No way.
What do you love now after?
What I love now is like cultivating my team, and I have my team is so impressive. Having 4 to 6 direct reports that could all easily take my job, that are all as smart or smarter than me, is one of the most fulfilling things in my job, and forces me, gets me excited every day about learning more. So that's definitely the most exciting thing.
Despite not preparing for your talk, it was very good. It was really genuine. I appreciate that. How did you get, from going from somebody selling burritos out of his car in El Dorado Canyon to selling in pretty major stores? How did you get the major stores to listen to you?
I couldn't initially. Yes. So the question was, what were the mechanics around making sales to large retail chains versus mom and pop shops, or even before that, selling out of a cooler? So I never successfully sold burritos out of a cooler. I tried, but I am not a door-to-door salesperson. Everybody just looked so confused. And I only tried it for a few days. I went to construction sites, that didn't work. Went to park and rides, that didn't work. So I went to the El Dorado Corner Market, and I was having a cup of coffee there, and I realized that there were a couple other local burrito brands there, and, with like home-looking printed labels. I was like, I can do that. I went home, I made some labels, I made a sell sheet, I went over there, I made my first sale. I was like, okay, that's easy, I can go do that. Going from, that was easy, really. I mean, tracking down all the convenience stores and mom and pop shops, all it took was some confidence to go in and pound the pavement and kind of cold call these people. To go into retail stores is a lot different. And when you get going, after you have a small base business built on 50 mom and pop shops, it's no big deal to go to a Vitamin Cottage, or to go to a local co-op in Fort Collins, or even to go into a Whole Foods store, and show them your product. Those are all retailers that are really, they cater to smaller producers. They're used to working with smaller producers. They're very, very friendly to smaller producers. When you want to go call on Ahold, or you want to go call on Kroger, or you want to call on Target or Super Value, that's a different story. You got to go in there armed with some real serious sales data and some money to spend, because it's a pay-to-play environment, and probably a broker, a sales broker, and a hotshot salesperson. I've got 2 VPs of sales that are total badasses, You wouldn't want me at the meeting, that's for sure. I always joke with my sales guys. They ask me to be at sales meetings sometimes, but I always just muck it up because I'm not like dry enough, I guess. It's a completely different set of mechanics. It really is. But you build towards it. You go to the mom and pops, and you go to the Vitamin Cottage, and you get into Whole Foods. You're in Whole Foods. You're like, I'm on top of the world. I'm in Whole Foods. Then you get into King Soopers, which is one region of Kroger. Then you go prove that story at one region of Kroger. You take that to Kroger nationally, and Kroger nationally says, all right, we'll give you a shot with 900 Kroger stores.
I have a simple question. I want to hear the story of the name.
Okay, yeah. So the company is still called, and the brand name was originally called Phil's Fresh Foods. Okay, that's still the name of the company. Part of why I was able to get the deal done with Brendan and Tom was they wanted to rebrand it. Brendan is really kind of a marketing, strategic brand positioning genius. That's his thing. And he came, and I said, no problem. I'm not attached to the brand. If you think you can do something better with it, let's do it. He started playing with it and thought of it one night. The way it stemmed was from this kind of, and it's a little bit intellectual, but he started with this idea of burritos are crap in the frozen food section. Typically, they don't have to be crap. Why can't you love your burrito? So he got to this idea of love your burrito, and then it was like love what you put in your burrito, and then he was like love, and then he said, we can't call this thing love burritos because you need to have, kids who are gonna, drop into the half pipe in their skateboard wearing the shirt, and if it says love burritos, they're not gonna do that. So he turned it around, he's like, evil, oh my God, evil, it's evolution, it's like evil, whatever. But it's also love backwards, and moms can feel great about serving natural and organic, kids, food to their kids, and the kid who wants to drop into the half pipe, looks cool in the shirt.
That was a good move.
I agree with you. It was a very good move.
It occurs to me that almost every entrepreneur is looking at certain numbers, certain cues within a company to determine whether the company is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. What kind of things are you looking at, equations, formulas? What is it you're looking at on a daily basis to know if you're going in the right direction?
It depends on the, yes, I'm sorry. The question was, what cues do I look at, or what cues should an entrepreneur look at on a day-to-day basis within the organization to make sure that they're on track? And I think it really, really depends on what business you're in and what cycle of growth you're in. When we first did the rebrand, which was in August of 2008, August of 2009, the number one priority was marketing and making that brand mean something. And when I say making it mean something, having it resonate and having it be relevant to people's lives, our consumers' lives. That was the number one. That was the most important thing that we needed to do, was build our brand. We did that very quickly through Facebook and through grassroots and through, marketing activation and PR and all these different things. Once we did that, we said, okay, we don't need to spend any more money than we're already spending on that right now. We've proven that because it was basically an internal test. It was, does evil work? Does our brand work? Yes, our brand works. Okay, now we can go to the next thing. The next thing is we've got to hit the sales gas. We need to get some scale in our business. So then the biggest thing became, sales. How are our sales doing? Same store sales, year over year, month over month. Are we beating our competitors? Showing that we could compete on a store-by-store basis within the marketplace. Once we proved that, we said, okay, check that one off the list. Now we got to go to manufacturing. We got to build manufacturing scale because the sales are going to come in and we're not going to be able to fill orders. That's kind of what we're in right now. We grew 287% in the last year and a half, and we can barely fill orders right now. So that's why I'm at my plant 15 hours a day. So I think that, in terms of the actual mechanics and the metrics that you look at, it changes all the time if you have a high growth business. But beyond everything, like higher level, more philosophically, I think morale of the company and morale of your teammates and morale of your employees, that's kind of the best gauge, of how your company's doing. When people,
Yeah, I have a company that I've owned for more than 15 years myself, and now I'm
looking finally to get investors, and I'm somewhat clueless about knowing about what to look for in investors, how much I want them to own. I mean, I bootstrap this all up. And, I think that I want them to bring a lot more than money. And it sounds like you guys brought brand understanding, but can you explain more about how you educated yourself in terms of what you wanted your investors to bring to the table?
Yeah, definitely. The question was, what do I want? How did I educate myself about what I was seeking out in an investor? And I think it goes back to that intentionality that I was talking about and kind of your own individual purpose. I think that the first most important thing that you need to recognize is what type of business do you want to have and what do you want your role in that business to be. There are people that run businesses that do not play well with others. They want to drive the car and they do not want other people driving the car. That's a very, very important piece of information. That is a piece of information that one should not be in denial about. And you should look that one straight in the mirror and realize it. And when you're meeting with people, you should tell them that. That means that you need a silent investor. It sounds like you feel like you need somebody similar to myself, someone that can add something to your business, smart money possibly. So that kind of frees you up. Beyond that, in terms of how do you educate yourself about what to ask these people? I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I know now because I did it, but I was shooting from the hip when I met with all these investors. I very quickly kind of learned their language, and there's different levels of investors. There's different levels of sophistication. I have very sophisticated investors, which was extremely challenging for me because I was not a sophisticated legal financial person. Cigar box accounting pretty much, So, going from that to what you want to do a private placement memorandum with a preferred stock deal with a term and a dividend, and I was clueless. I didn't know what to ask. I think that if you know that you want somebody to add something more than capital to your business, that's the most important thing. And from there, I think you just need to do your own due diligence, depending on how sophisticated you are versus how sophisticated the people you want to get into business with are. But I could not overemphasize the importance of the legal aspect of this and the corporate governance aspect of this in terms of getting that right, because if you don't get that right, it will really bite you in the ass.
How did you get it right?
I had some expensive ass lawyers. Spent like $200,000 on legal fees to get my deal done.
I'm also just wondering, do you think that you'll ever stop growing? And if not, why not? And if so, why?
Will we ever stop growing? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Growing in terms of our sales? Is that is that the type of growing you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we'll ever stop growing. Because we're so tiny still. Even though we're, big in a local sense, and we're not a startup. We're still a small business, but we're like a medium. We're like a big small business, We've got some employees. We've got a fairly big P&L. We've got a fairly big balance sheet. But there's still so much to bite off. I've bitten off hardly anything. I mean, we're still in 15% of the total volume of the grocery chain, of grocery stores in the country. We haven't touched club channel. We haven't touched mass channel. We haven't touched the food service channel. We haven't touched the export channel. So no, I don't think we'll ever stop growing. I think that the only reason that we would stop growing would be because of some type of internal failure, like a food safety issue, something like that, or some type of externality that aliens land here and kidnap us all, and we can't have consumer packaged products anymore. I don't know, but beyond a crazy externality and a crazy internality, I don't think we'll stop growing.
Okay. And is that because of the kind of model that you've locked yourself into with the relationship with all of your investors, that you kind of always do have to keep growing and continue to gobble up like 100% of the market share?
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I have a lot of capital to return to some people. If I don't continue growing, I will probably not have this job. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, I think that, our mission of revolutionizing frozen food and educating people about, food and the environment is aligned with a high growth story. And I don't think that we'll be able to do that unless we get real scale in our business and get marketing power and communication power.
Hey Phil, I'm wondering how you developed the formula for your excellent burrito. Is it the same burrito you started with?
No, it's the question was, how did I develop the formulas for my food? That's kind of my passion, and it's not formulating burritos. That's not my passion. My passion is really culinary arts, not mixing individually quick frozen grilled meats with beans and rice and salsas and using machines to, make them at, 80 units a minute on manufacturing lines. So it's kind of weird that I'm doing that, because it's definitely not kind of like the core of my culinary heart. But I kind of work out of all of the way I get to all of my recipes is in my house. And I kind of start with, what is the ideal of this experience? If it's a chicken enchilada, we have a chicken enchilada bowl now. If that's the experience that I'm going for, I will go and kind of create the ultimate chicken enchilada experience at my house. And then, from there, I kind of back out of it and figure out how I'm going to commercialize it. We put it through a process. I mean, our innovation process is pretty involved. It's super cross-functional across every discipline in the organization. Obviously on the food side, food safety side, manufacturing and automation side, design, marketing, all that stuff. So it's just kind of starting from that highest level. This is the goal, and seeing how far can we get and what price point do we want to be at, and kind of looking at the nutritional guardrails, looking at the price point guardrails, and eventually you get there.
I have a couple of questions for you. One is, as you were growing and doing things on your own, were you thinking of building a management team or an advisory board? And if you were, was that difficult without some sort of funding? Did you need your partners and investors first to be able to really grow that side of your business to help your whole business grow?
Yeah, definitely. The question was, at what point did I decide to, or what point did I look at getting a management team and an advisory board? How did I fund it? Yeah, in the beginning, I had no idea what either of those things were. I guess I knew what a management team was, but it wasn't something that I thought about because I was going to have this lifestyle business. Advisory board, I didn't know what that was. After I kind of came out of isolation and got myself around people that knew how to run businesses, they started saying, "Where's your management team? Nobody's ever going to invest in this thing if you don't have a management team." So I went out and got a management team, but I didn't have any money to get a management team. So I went out and got a crappy management team, and it was terrible. It was a nightmare. They were awful. They just made my problems worse. I should have stayed alone. I shouldn't have invited them to be part of my team. If you can't pay to have the right person in a position, I don't know. Then you shouldn't have them in that position. I was trying to pay people, $40,000. I was finding people to pay them $40,000 to do a $100,000 job. And I mean, I think at that point, after a few of those instances, I realized that, I manufacture food, and I'm trying to compete with branders and marketers and people that are geniuses at this stuff. So if I'm going to do this, I need to hire geniuses. Geniuses don't work for cheap. I mean, most of the time. I mean, professionals, and all of the people who are on my team, they have 5-10 years experience in this field. So I definitely needed to monetize the business to pay for them. On the advisor side, just through networking and finding all the mentors that I had, I was able to assemble an advisory board, which was extremely helpful during that time. And I was able to drag them into my world. I was able to, I mean, and that's kind of what an entrepreneur needs to do when you're underfunded. It's like, hey, you're over here, you know, you're smart. I'm going to suck you in, you know, for free. You know, you got to kind of do that as much as you can. And I did that with a bunch of folks, and I'm indebted to them forever.
Okay, and my second question is, sounds like you're not aiming to sell your business, but even in your early growth, the 7 years prior to getting your partners and investors, what was your concern about just getting market share and getting out there? You were sort of first of your kind in that market, even though there was lots of frozen, crappy burritos. You were going to be something that was quality. Like, were you then, and how about now, do you feel about these big companies coming in and trying to really take?
Yeah, I think in the beginning I had no concept of, you know, what my role was going to be in terms of like market share and speed to market and those types of things. Now I'm very attuned to what all of our competitors are doing and what all the, you know, the big brands are doing, and they absolutely want what we have. Private equity firms and VCs, they call us all the time. They want to invest in our company. It probably won't be very long before the brands call us and want to buy us. I'm sure that will be happening within the next 12 months because we're getting into that revenue zone that's in their sweet spot where they're going to start. We're going to be on their radar, and we're popping up in the sales data that we buy from Nielsen's, and they're going to be like, who, what, they sold how much? We go buy those people, because that's the way they think, because they don't innovate, they just go buy the innovation. So I think that speed at this point is probably one of the most important things. I mean, it's not all that different than the technology industry. You know, everybody is racing for tablets right now, trying to catch iPad. You know, and as, you know, Apple launches their next product, they're ripping up their plans and they're going back to the drawing board, and it's just like speed, speed, speed. How can we get there? How can we get it? And it's the same thing in any consumer electronics are not that different from consumer packaged products. I mean, it moves a lot faster, but it's the same thing. People are going to see what we're doing just the same way that all the quick service restaurants see what Chipotle is doing in terms of the messaging around family farmers and humanely raised ranching and natural and organic, lifestyle brand, cool hip factor, and they're going to go rip that off immediately. We're already kind of seeing it. We've already seen 2 brands kind of rip off our messaging a little bit. But, you know, that's what happens. I mean, so we need to move quickly because they have more money than us.
Yeah, I bet.
They can hurt us.
All right, so how about a big round of applause?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
So the format for this, our 2 new panelists are going to introduce themselves and spend maybe 90 seconds talking about a little bit about their background and kind of why they're here. And then this is an audience participation. So you get to come up and I'll just raise your hand if you want to speak, and I'll have you speak into the mic. And the rules are, if you're going to ask a question, please introduce yourself so for the camera we know who you are. And our focus is on the pivot now. So the questions, we try to narrow these specifically to this topic. And so each of them will talk about you already heard Phil's story about how he pivoted. Roger couldn't make it tonight because of death in the family. And so Alex, his co-founder, is going to tell the story of Rocket and their constant pivoting since I've met Roger, known Roger, and then Lisa. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So let's just give it up for our panel, and we'll get started with this part.
We've got a technology platform for small and medium businesses to go to an internet portal and create a real engagement process with their consumers using all the different media channels. All they have to do is worry about what messages and what they're trying to accomplish with their business. And the platform really says what kind of message needs to go out, who it needs to go out to, and on what media channel it needs to go out. We've had a number of different pivots in the market. Early on when we first started the company, we thought about instant voice messaging, which is actually, there are a number of vendors doing it today. But we looked at the business model and how we would make money with instant voice messaging. And really what that is, imagine going to your contact list on your BlackBerry or smartphone, pressing and holding the button and saying, hey, I'm running 20 minutes late, letting go, and off this message goes in the network. The person that's getting that message will get a text message, or will get their phone will actually ring. When you pick it up, they only hear the voice message, and you can respond in this kind of instant voice messaging pattern. As we looked at that and how we monetized that from an advertising perspective, which was, really the lion's share of how people were trying to do it a few years ago, we said we couldn't do it. But we knew the technology is good, right? So we started to build a platform kind of without a purpose. And then we started looking at, okay, well, now how can we repurpose and create this engagement strategy, right, between two parties? And then we landed on the SMB and trying to solve kind of advertising. Advertising is a really tough problem to solve for the small and medium business, primarily because they don't have a lot of time to put into it, right? So we're now basically streamlining that process. And most importantly, we're adding on top of that this engagement process where you can actually get very valuable information back from the consumers. That's the most important knowledge that a small medium business can get.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Craddy, and back in, I guess it was July of 2010, I founded or launched my company Tegan & Mac, and Tegan & Mac is an organic cotton baby clothing line. And I'd worked on that for quite a while, about close to a year before I actually launched the company, had some success with it, but was finding that it really wasn't taking the hold that I wanted it to take. And so I started thinking about, well, coming in January of 2011, how am I going to infuse more energy into this business, take it to places where I want it to go, have kind of a bigger bang with it. And essentially what I wound up doing was creating a new company. And so that's what I'm working on right now. And but it all kind of ties together. We'll get more into it, I'm sure, as the night goes on. But it basically, I figured out a lot of my own mistakes that I made. I figured out what wasn't working and put all of that knowledge and that information into this new business. And it is so much easier when you actually feel like you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing. All of a sudden things start coming to you and you're not having to work at it like you were before. And that's where I really realize now that I'm on the right path. But I could not have done what I'm doing now had I not done Tegan & Mac. And that's kind of how it all sort of, nothing is a mistake. It all kind of works together and it helps you grow and to figure out what you're really here for. So my new company is Mama Jane's, and Tegan & Mac is still up and running and alive and will continue on, and it's actually now a part of Mama Jane's in a sort of interesting way. And we'll talk more about it, I guess, as we go on.
Okay, and we already know Phil's story. So my first question, while you guys think about what you want to ask, is the concept of pivot. All right, what was the catalyst for the pivot? So at the point where you feel that you shifted your business model significantly, what caused that? And what were the factors that kind of led up to that point? And then if you could just share a little bit about, once you started down the path, was there any hesitation like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? Am I on the wrong path? So if you could start with that, and then we'll take questions from the audience.
Okay, well, I think the first pivot when we looked at the instant voice messaging, we just looked at it and I think we were really honest with ourselves and said, well, we can't make money. We can look at all those kind of other technologies out there. If you can't make money, you got to do something else, right? And I think all these pivots, particularly for a small company, is that just take the step. Go do it and see what you learn. If you don't take the step, you're going to be in this quagmire for a while, right? And you won't learn anything in that process.
I think the catalyst for my pivot was kind of failure, that my business was failing. It wasn't working, and it was painful operating it. So, and I had no focus.
So I think that those were the catalysts. Lannis, I'm the CEO of a company called Boulder Data, and we manage and protect and help you assure that you retain your precious digital assets. This is an observation, and then I'm hopefully you care to comment on this. I think there's a reason why, and I see this theme in it, in each of your stories, why it's called a pivot, and it's not a step, and it's not a jump. Because a pivot, as an old basketball coach, right? One foot's planted, and then you move the other in another direction. So, often what I see is people see that it's not working. I think one of the lessons learned here is that you've made some changes, but it was still fundamentally taking advantage of what you just experienced, right? And then altering the course some by stepping out in another direction, right? But you kept one foot grounded so that it wasn't wasting that effort, right? And so I think that was something that I heard common in each of the stories. So I don't know if you care to comment.
Sure. So early on when we started developing the technology, the core of that technology is actually still in our product, right? It was really about how we address the market, and absolutely it's a pivot. You have to take a step somewhere, right? And I think one of the things you really have to think about is you got to move fast. That's number one, right? And then you got to understand that some of your decisions may not matter, right? So you could go out and stumble and nobody will even notice, right? Because you're not a big brand. People don't see what you do every day, right? But you're going to learn something real fast when you go in front of a customer and you say this happened or that happened or we've done this. Interesting enough for us, early on we called our system Rocket, right? And we moved away from Rocket into something called Loyal to Me because our platform allows the small, medium business to engage with their most loyal customers who really have the economic impact on their business, right? So you can turn a 1,000-person email list into a highly engaged 100-person email list. That's something that the small, medium business can handle. And it turns out that as you go into the market and you say loyalty, it means something different to everybody, right? So we started as Rocket, we changed it to Loyal to Me, and now what? We're back at Rocket because that engagement process is this instant voice messaging piece where it says, just Rocket me. I can talk about it in real language, right? And that was really important as we kind of spread the news to more and more businesses.
So to comment on what you said, I think it's a shift. And for me, I would never have thought of the Mama Jane's model had I not done Tegan and Mac. It would have never even occurred to me because I understand the pain of the vendor. I understand what mom entrepreneurs go through, balancing your family with wanting to be a businesswoman. And balancing all of that and then having a place in the marketplace. And so I still, with Tegan and Mac, I've been able to, because it's my love, it's my first sort of business, and it's selling and it's doing fine, but it's not going to be that thing that just catapults me. And so, but I definitely, it's a part of Mama Jane's, and that's what I love so much about the shift is that I can bring in this thing that is very important to me, that does all of these fantastic things for the environment, for women. It's a lot of different programs for supporting women. It's I've been able to figure out what is it that I really want to do and what is my purpose here. And I've done a lot of work on that, and it has to do with supporting women and supporting moms specifically. And so the fact that Tegan and Mac can now fit into that model and be a part of a much bigger model is really exciting. But it's, definitely a shift and not a complete change.
While you guys are thinking, because I know you're thinking hard, Phil mentioned introspection. You just mentioned it, so why don't we just go ahead and toss this out. How important is it for you to know yourself when you pivot? Did the pivot enhance something that was already within you, and what was that?
I mean, I think that, you know, it definitely is going to amplify, you know, what you achieve if you're more introspective when you're pivoting, I would say. But, you know, it's a growth process. I mean, it's a growth process, and you're never going to have perfect alignment there. You're not going to figure everything out all at once. You're not going to, you know, figure out, you know, how to iterate on your business, you know, in a perfect way, and, you know, exactly, you know, your reason for being as a person and a business owner at the same time. So, I mean, I think introspection is always a good thing. It always leads to more understanding of yourself and more understanding of why we act the way we do, and, you know, what the, you know, intended results are. So you should always aim for that.
I think for me it was an incredibly important part of it, because I am essentially my own target market, and so I really had to know me and know what makes me tick, and why do I buy, and what do I want when I go to a website. Do I just want to go shop? Not really. I want a connection. I want to talk to other moms. I want to feel supported. I want you know, to find out what everybody else is doing and thinking, and there's a lot going on in the mom entrepreneur market, and also in just the mom consumer market. It's not just about going and shopping. And so I needed to know all of that before I could build this model. And so for me, I actually had, and I have a business partner as well, we sat down and spent hours on what we call our core work, which is, you know, what are our values? What are the values of the company? Let's make sure they're in alignment. And all of that work needed to happen before we could actually have the model, because the model is completely centered around that.
Look, these pivots just have to happen as fast as possible, right? And so from, you know, I have a bunch of rules or sayings that I throw out with everybody in my team, and sometimes they really don't like it. And one of the rules is the better is the enemy of the good, right? And that means, look, you're not going to, when you change a marketing slick, or when you change a technology direction or something like that, it's not going to be as well thought out and complete as what you have, right? But what you have is not working, right? So you got to get over to the next step, or the next lily pad, as fast as you can, and just, you know, it's a loss, right? And you got to just get over that, right? And when I try to drive this, the better is the enemy of the good kind of thing, that means just go, right? Do it as well as you can in the time that you have, and see what you learn. And that's really an internal discipline that that we found that works really well, because a lot of times you'll come up with a brainstorming channel, right, where you say, oh, it'd be great if we do this, right? And it's like, yeah, but we can't bite all that off right now.
When you've come across people who, in an effort to try to help you, played a mean game of devil's advocate, how did you take in what you needed to learn from those kinds of conversations, and yet still see the possibility and see things with optimism? Did you have a strategy, or was that just denial, or what did you do there?
I think that people, you know, playing devil's advocate is extremely important, and I think that, you know, if you really want to be a great entrepreneur, or you know, great anything, you kind of need to be your own worst critic. And I mean, if you're your own worst critic, anything that anybody points out that's negative about the way you're going about something, you know, shouldn't be shocking or offensive, you know, and if it is, then maybe they're wrong and you can just write it off. But yeah, I think that, you know, trying to put aside, you know, like the emotionalism around, you know, those types of experiences with people that either challenge you or maybe make you feel uncomfortable because they're, you know, telling you something that might be flawed with what you're trying to do it's really important. It's part of it. It's an exercise.
I guess the way I look at that is I already agree with myself, right? So to have those engagements where a bunch of people disagree with me, that's really a good thought process for everybody to go through, right? I also have found that when people challenge you, particularly investors, as they come in and they kind of play this devil's advocate role, it's not to be a devil's advocate, it's to really get at what you believe, right? And if you're saying, oh yeah, we could do that, and we could do it this way, and then you say, well, what about this? Oh yeah, we could do it that way as well. That means you guys even haven't decided, right? And so a lot of times it's a test for you to say, you know, yes, this is what we're doing, I like your idea, but this is what we're doing and this is why. And if you have all that material, you know, people typically back down, and if they don't, you know, just agree to disagree.
And I think it has to do as well with the context in which it's coming to you. Because in a situation like that, where let's say it's someone, it's a business environment and perhaps they're a potential investor or you want them to be, they have a specific purpose for doing that. If you're at a holiday party and it's just somebody being, you know, negative and trying to appear smarter than you, you know, that kind of mentality, to me, I don't even let it enter my consciousness. I kind of just take it, I'll laugh it off, I might even engage the conversation for a little while, but at that point you just have to know where it's coming from and see if it's authentic or not. If they authentically want to challenge you because they want to make sure they care about you and they want to make sure you're doing the right thing, let it in and ask yourself, do they have a point? If they're just trying to be devil's advocate for the sake of it, that's where I go to a place where I say, you know what, I believe in myself and I know I'm on the right path and I don't even let it enter my consciousness.
Dave Roberts, sorry, this is pretty loud. I'm not sure how my question is going to come out, so I'm just going to let it evolve, but I kind of went in reverse of what Phil's done in that I started in big corporates doing all that kind of production management and HR and sales and so on, and then I kind of had my epiphany when I was in my mid-30s and decided I want to go back and make businesses responsible for what they do on the planet. How that's translating is kind of evolving, but I'm just interested in your perspective, on what you see the sort of the role that you have as leaders with your businesses in correcting what's obviously been a horrendous path for us in the last 8 to 10 years. Throw that out there.
You know, I think that most businesses and most people are socially aware and want to make changes. As part of Rocket, we've engaged small medium business and allowed them to really engage our consumers. We've also engaged causes, and so we have nonprofits and private schools and things like that where they have a constituency that are their backers, their financial backers, and then, you know, the parents, for example, and so forth. So our technology actually expands to more of what the consumers would care about, right, in a broader sense. So our technology is I hope will help change some of the causes' ability to go out and do better stuff and more stuff.
I think that, you know, as businesses grow and as they gain power and as the people that lead them gain power, their responsibility it also increases because their ability to do harm increases, their ability to influence people increases. So, I mean, I think that everybody, you know, personally and, you know, as leaders has, you know, some level of responsibility in their lives, and as leaders, you know, people with more power in their lives have more responsibility to try and do good and try and improve, you know, conditions. And I mean, you know, beyond that, I mean, I think from a practical matter, you know, we're seeing now just kind of the infancy of a new era of business ethics. Maybe it's hard to tell that depending on what businesses you're looking at. But certainly people are concerned about, you know, the blatant corruption and criminality in the business world. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are fed up with it and want it changed. When you're dealing with a consumer product, I think that that's very relevant to people's lives. And that there's power to change that. You know, when you're dealing with more abstract products like financial services, for example, maybe consumers don't have as much power. It's a little easier to pull the wool over their eyes.
I agree with that. I think for me, it's at the core of everything that I do in my businesses. I actually have 3 businesses that I share with my partner and I. Tegan and Mac is an obvious one that's an eco-friendly business where it's an organic baby clothing line. But it's not just about using organic fabric. It's about who do you use as a manufacturer and what are their principles. It's about you know, what do you use in your own business practices? Are you using loads of paper and virgin paper and all that in your labels, or are they all recycled material themselves? These are things that the end user, your consumer, can't necessarily see, but are you doing it anyways? That's kind of, you know, what I ask myself whenever I make any kind of decision like that. If you're going to be authentic and you're going to call yourself an eco-friendly company, you have to be that way throughout the entire company. Not just what people can see. And so with Tegan and Mac, that was a high priority. With Mama Jane's, it is as well, although we are not just featuring eco-friendly products, it's going to be, the focus is on mom entrepreneur products, mom-made products. But we thought, well, my partner and I were talking about it, and we said, well, how can we bring in our values of helping the environment, you know, all these social responsibility, all these different things that we want to promote, yet not require it of all of our vendors necessarily. What we came up with is we're going to specially designate those vendors. So we're going to hold out on our site the vendors that are eco-friendly, that use fair trade products, that do all the things that we want to promote, and sort of give them special designation. That way, as a consumer, you can come into the site and you can say, oh, okay, great, I want to support these vendors, if that's what you believe in.
So all of you had investors with your old model, and valuations set to those that business model. What was the process you went through to convince them they should jump on board to the new model with the new valuations, with the new projections?
I'll go first because I just did this. So for me, it was, you know, I was lucky that I didn't have, my investors were friends and family money, and so it wasn't an angel or a VC that I had to convince to jump on board. So that makes it a little easier. But at the same time, this is people's money that you've taken in, that you've said you're going to do a certain thing with, and now the plan is changing. And so it doesn't matter how close they are to you, you need to have a viable reason and a good reason for why you're doing that. And so what I did was, it's all about communication, and it's really talking to them about what you have been doing and what you're going to be doing in the future, and why they want to jump on board with you, and getting them excited about it. And that's what I did. I really just started talking to them about it very early on, saying this is what I'm thinking about, and not, you know, I didn't speak in vague terms. You want to be real direct about what it is that you're doing. But early on, I got them in the loop and said, Tegan and Mac is growing, and we're changing focus, and it's really exciting. And then my next correspondence was, okay, this is what the new model is going to look like. And then finally, where it came to the point where, okay, now we are actually doing this, they were already so thrilled at what the new model was going to look like that it was just a natural process for them to want to swap over.
I think that there are a couple different kinds of investors, and you kind of need to bucket them into your sophisticated investors and then your friends and family, maybe, I don't know what the term is, maybe friends and family is a term. You know, one is what is my return on capital going to be? What's my internal rate of return going to be? What's your exit strategy? How much money are you going to give back to me if I give you X number of dollars, and in what time frame are you going to give it back to me? That's what the sophisticated investor does, and if you can't answer those questions, you're not ever going to get any money from sophisticated investors. If you're talking to a sophisticated investor, then there's all kinds of metrics, industry standards that you can use X times EBITDA, X times sales, whatever. But most of those metrics aren't really relevant to early stage growth businesses because they're just not big enough. And most of them don't have any EBITDA, or if you're a startup, you don't even have any revenues. So what is a business worth? A business value is 100% arbitrary. Is Facebook worth, what did Goldman Sachs just value it at? I don't even know, $500 billion? Is that what they valued it at? I think, $50 billion. They
25 to 50 billion.
Yeah, $50 billion. Sure. I don't know. Yeah, it's worth that because Goldman Sachs gave them an investment at that, so they got it. So it's just like everything else in free market capitalism. It's irrational, and it's arbitrary. And when you're dealing with friends and family, they're investing in you because they want to be part of something. They want to be along for the ride. They want to get excited about something. They believe in you. So they probably don't care how much it's valued at,
Yeah, I guess on the investor side, look at, when you raise the capital to begin with, you don't know that you're going to be doing that same thing in 18 months from now, right? You've got an idea, it seems to work, you go out and talk to people. I think people are just looking for success. They're looking for people that can navigate, these uncertain waters, right? That every entrepreneur has to go through. So silent investors are always really good, right? Because they're not in the day-to-day operations. If they are sophisticated investors and are helping you operate the organization, from an advisory perspective or a board perspective, that's an entirely different thing, right? Because I think we're all in it, for return of capital and so forth. And it's a tough one. Valuation, I've never had to do a down round in the 3 or 4 companies that I've had, but sometimes you have to take it on the chin, right? To re-vector the company, right? And as long as you're forthcoming with folks about what you're doing, why you're doing it, they may be mad, but it's better than losing your money altogether.
Chris, you hear me? Test. More of a specific question for Alex. When you talked about pivoting into SMB with your technology, what were some basic strategies that you incorporated to solicit those merchants to sell them on your product? And we kind of got insights into that for the burritos, but I'm just curious from a technology perspective how that worked.
Again, I think if you look at most SMBs, their hair's on fire running their own business, right? And when you're out there trying to say, hey, look at this great thing we have, it's about the speed of adoption that they can take whatever your product, change their processes, and start using your product, right? And so I've just called it simply self-service. Our technology has to be as self-service as possible, meaning that an SMB can find us on the web, understand what we're doing, sign up for an account, and run their first promotion without us ever touching them, right? That impacts the core of all the different functional groups, right, or functional areas, marketing, technology, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes you have to look at just that adoption process, right? If they can do that by themselves, one, they're going to be confident about it, right? They're going to say, yeah, I'll pay for this. But 2, it allows them to, again, focus on their promotions and what they want to try to accomplish for the business, and let the technology worry about the rest of the stuff. Okay, so yeah, Facebook and Twitter, what about Tumblr, and what about the next guy, right? I mean, all these things, they're so overwhelmed with all that anyway, right? You've got to just bring down that barrier. So just think about the friction of adoption for, if it's a consumer business, for consumers, if it's SMB, it's their adoption as well.
I'm Britta. I said something before, but my question is, are there any soft terms that you should be looking for when you're taking on capital. So, for example, I've been told that it's a really good idea to make sure that you're doing a lot of expectation management with your investors to make sure that they, you know, you don't have somebody who's really got a lot of, knowledge in the region, in the area of like management or something like that, who's wanting to comment on your graphic design. What were your strategies for working with investors who might turn out to be a little bit more hands-on than you had originally expected? And are there any other things like that that are kind of flags as far as like the social relationship with an investor ongoingly that someone should look for?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because you get yourself in a position where you really need the money, right, for your business, and you want your business to work. But it's just as important for you to interview your investor as it is for them to interview you. Because the fact of the matter is, you know, you might get lucky and have a silent investor and have them just, hey, here's some money and go do your thing. That would be great. But more often than not, they're going to want to have more involvement than that. And so you need to know, do they share my values? Do they share the direction that I want to go in? Because if you get married to someone who just wants big profits, churn them in, churn them out, and your whole goal is to nurture and build this dream, and it's completely not going to work, and you're going to wind up being miserable. And so, and depending on how much money they put in, they may change the face of your company. And so I think it's all about having those conversations up front and having the strength to say no if it's not the right investor, and to have faith that, you know, another one will come along that will share the same beliefs as you. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree on every little thing. It just means that you share the same vision and the same direction that you want the company to go in.
Yeah, that's well put. I totally agree. And I think that, you know, to use an analogy, I think that having a successful investor relationship is very similar to having a successful personal relationship or having a successful marriage. You know, people that communicate, you know, with people that they're in relationships with have successful relationships, and people that don't, and have surprises. And people that get pissed off, and I thought you were going to do this, and I thought you were going to do that. And, you know, if you communicate about that stuff ahead of time, you don't run into those issues.
Can I ask a follow-up to that question? So, what do you think are the critical, you mentioned some of the, you know, the basics that you would go over with an investor, having them agreeing on how many times return they should be expecting. What do you think are some other really key points to hit? I mean, do I need to sit down with every potential investor and go through my entire website with them and make sure that they love everything that it is that we're doing? I mean, how much time does it take to, you know, work through that?
It depends. I would say first of all, it depends on how much money you're trying to raise. Depends on how many people you want to raise it from. But generally, I would say no, don't do that. I would say if you're trying to solicit an investment from one person or 50 people, whether it's $50,000 or $5 million, I would create a document, kind of the shorter the better, articulate your business plan, tell them where you're going, you know, what your vision of it is, have numbers that surround it, and clear expectations. And then, you know, from there, I would say, you know, interviewing them and having that conversation, but, and ask them, you know, you need to ask. You need to say very specifically, I'm trying to raise $100,000, the minimum investment is $10,000, whatever the terms are surrounding it. Accredited investors only. You know, I'm going to push out reporting 4 times a year. Beyond that, I don't really want to hear from you people. Whatever it is, you know, whatever you want it to be. I think it's fair to ask that. I have 80 investors. I don't even know most of them, and I don't want to hear from them ever. And if I started to hear from them, I would have a big conversation with my
partners, because I don't have time to hear from them at all.
Yeah, so just to give you an idea, our document to put money into the company is 4 pages. Our sales, or our investor pitch, we've got a short version and a long version. The short version is like 10 PowerPoint charts, right? Because, look, you got to get them convinced of the vision. You know, that emotional attachment to what you're doing is far more important than anything else, right? If they're attached to it, they're going to read your documentation. They're going to, you know, they may have comments and things like that, but you know, we've got, in all the money we've raised, we really haven't had but one person say, well, what about this in the document? Well, we fired them as an investor, right? Because I don't want that kind of relationship, right? Where he's sitting there, you know, getting us to answer his questions instead of doing what we need to do in the market.
If you build the right governance and you have like I mean, if you're going to have investors, you should probably have a board of directors, and theoretically, all of that stuff should happen at the board level. And I mean, you know, the 4-page document, some people call that like an executive summary. Some people have it be 1 page, or some people call it a teaser, you know, 1 page, you send the 1-page teaser, they say, hey, I'm interested, then you send them, you know, the full thing.
That's exactly what I have. It's a 2-page, what I call my investor summary, and it's just bullet points, point, all the reasons why you would want to invest in my business. And it has to do, it's centered around the opportunity, the what's in it for me, for the investor, because that's ultimately what they want to know. And have you done your homework on your market, and the return you're telling them they're going to get is actually something that's feasible. So that's what I would hand first, and then that invites a meeting or questions or another, you know, where you're going to go into the detail and spend the time and the energy, but not in the first conversation.
Okay, so we're out of time for our panel, so join me in giving them a big round of applause for excellent advice.